Well, since a picture is worth 1,000 words, we have been working on the issue of Karen Neal going into the crime scene, not once, but twice, according to testimony. The first time was when Darlie was pushed out. Darlie was out on the porch. Karen Neal and Terry Neal were coming across the street. An officer said, "Stop, don't go any further." They told him that she was a nurse, and he said, "You can go through," right? But he knows that Darlie's on the porch on a stretcher. He never said you can go in the house. So when she goes up to the porch, Byford and Koshak are working on Darlie, and Darren is talking to Darlie, right? So they're all got their attention. So Karen slips in, all right, and she says that she approached the area between the kitchen and the living room, and that she looked over and she could see Devin, who was laying in this area right here. She said she could see Devin laying there. And they asked her, "Did you see anyone else in the house?" And she said, "No, I didn't see anyone else." At that time, Walling and Waddell were upstairs searching. The rest of them were on the porch. All right. So she says that she looked in and she saw Devin, who was laying about right here. But she didn't say anything about seeing Damon. He hadn't been taken out yet. He would have been right here. So this is what, and the glass table in question was right here that had the fingerprint 85J. Right? So we've been working on the fact that Karen Neal's name is not on the list of people that they took fingerprints from. Right? And it's an issue with one of our non-supporters that Karen wasn't fingerprinted. Right? He says, well, they allowed her to walk in there. He's not comfortable with the death penalty because they allowed her to walk in there. They printed all these other people. They printed people that weren't even on the scene. They matched 85J against people that weren't even on the scene. People with criminal records. We've got a list. One guy right now that they printed against 85J is facing the RICO Act for corrupt stuff. That's a different story. But if Karen would have walked in, according to what she said, she approached the entrance, she looked over and saw Devin. Then she turned around and walked out. Now, like I said, that glass table was right here in this area. Now, I want to show you something else, how lovely they make the house. See, he would have been, that's where Damon was. Let's show something else real quick. Okay, the front door is like right here, and then you go over to the right, and there's the steps, and then you go into the room. So this Karen Neal came in this way. All right. So here's the front door right here. You can kind of see down that hallway from the front door. The front door is right where this cursor is moving. All right. So Karen Neal walks in. She approached it. She's up against the wall right here. She looks over, she sees Devin, and she turns around and she walks right back out. The police did not know she was in the house. The police thought that she was helping Darlie on the porch. They didn't know she was in the house at that point, right? That's why she wasn't printed. The second time she came in the house, they escorted her up to the stop of these stairs right here, and they had her retrieve Domain, the dog. So I can clear you. This pictures are worth 1,000 words, and I think it should put an end to this argument. There's no more bickering I'm not going to allow any more bickering about this on my page. I think that we've got somebody that's beaten to death. Oh, she slipped in there. She was kicking glass all over the place, and she touched that, and that 85J is her print. And, blah 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 blah, right? And we've been going at it for days. And in my private, and I've been very tolerant. And I worked it. I did learn some other things. I appreciate the argument. I learned some other things that's very important to this case. Rodney James McGaffey. Rodney James McGaffey is a person that's on that list of people that were fingerprinted. He was 16 years old at the time. He lived right up on Darlock, 3 minutes away, 2 blocks over from Chad Patterson and Jimmy Patterson, right? I'm only mentioning where their name is, right? So they matched 85J to his known print, which means that they didn't bring him in to get a print. It means they already had some on file because he had some crimes against children. He had a crime against a child back then. So I reached the guy. We found him. I found him. And he owns this exotic car dealership in Dallas. Right? So I hit the exotic car dealership. I hit them on Facebook. And, they said, so are you interested in renting an exotic car? I said, no. I'd like to talk to Rodney James McGaffey. I already knew he owned the place. He owns it. Right? I said, I'd like to talk to Rodney James McGaffey about the Darlie Routier case. I'm wondering why they printed him. I said, I know she's guilty and all that, and blah, blah, blah. They said, Rodney James McGaffey does not work here. I said, well, he might not work there because he owns the place. And I sent him pictures of his son who works with him. I sent him what I had. So he knew I knew that he was lying. All right, through this Facebook message. And I'm like, well, I understand, you got some legal problems now because he's up right now for the RICO Act. Organized crime. You can look at, anybody can look it up, and I encourage supporters to look it up. But anyways, I'm talking to him on Facebook, and he just denies everything. I said, well, okay, if you don't want to talk about it, that's fine with me. I understand, blah blah blah. Right then I go back to doing what I was doing. About 15 minutes later, I get this call from Texas. Right? He says, the guy says, do you still want to, rent an exotic car? And I said, no, that's what I told you that on the chat when you denied everything. All right? I said, I want to talk to Rodney James McGaffey about the Darlie Routier case. Why they fingerprinted it. Well, the guy hung up on me. The thing that's interesting about it is I didn't fill out any application to rent a car. The only way he knew who I was is because I messaged him on Facebook. So that means he took the time to look up my name and number and found it. He found the right one to my cell phone. So that's very interesting to me. Rodney James McGaffey. You guys look him up. He owns Boss Exotic Cars in Dallas, Texas. All right? And his name is on that fingerprint list that they took fingerprints. You can look that up on Darlie Fact or Fiction and Fiction. But anyways, with Karen, again, she came through this door right here, this straight to right here, and I believe she stopped right here because she didn't see Damon, which means she didn't touch the table. She didn't go nowhere near the glass, and I think with that, I've proven my point here on this one. I think we can stop arguing about it in the group. Mark, we got to stop arguing. It's pissing people off. We know she didn't touch it. We know the police didn't allow them in there. You have no proof that they can't. I have proof of where she went to. I'm using her own words. I saw Devin. She didn't say if she'd have went near that table, Damon would have been closer to her than she didn't do it. And dude, she's a well-trained nurse. That fingerprint is in blood. She's not going to touch anything in blood without a glove on. So I'd like to lay that to rest. I really would. I'm going to go back again here to what she would have saw when she stepped into that little hallway. Real quick. This is what she would have saw if she was standing right here, which is probably where she stopped at. But that table was over here. Devin was right there. She said she could see his eye because he had a blanket over him. And then she turned around and walked out. She didn't touch nothing. I like your thoughts, though.